Good morning from Metro Manila, the Philippines, Southeastern Asia. Today, on April the 9th, 2019, the Israeli voters will go to the polls to elect a new Knesset, or parliament, of 120 members from the entire country. The vote threshold is 3.25%, and election alliances or electoral alliances are allowed, which means then that those parties and electoral alliances which pass the vote threshold will be usually slightly overrepresented in it, especially if several percent of the votes go to political parties and alliances which fall below the vote threshold. The two main political alliances are the right-wing Likud coalition and the liberal left blue and white coalition. According to the latest available opinion polls, because election silence with no actual polls being published started at the end of Friday, April the 5th, 2019, the blue and white alliance would get between 27 and 32 seats, while the Likud coalition would get between 26 and 31 seats. The very latest opinion poll by panel project Midgum, Statnet, and Channel 13 predicts a dead heat with 28 Knesset members being elected, both on the lists of blue and white and Likud. The Labour Party would be a distant third with 11 seats. And then the United Right would have 7 seats. The Hadash Ta'al Alliance would have 6 seats, tied with Zehut, New Right, and United Torah Judaism. Meretz, which is a left-wing party in favor of the two-state solution, in other words, dividing up the disputed territory of the Holy Land into Israel and Palestine, both of which would be independent countries, would get 5 seats, as would the Orthodox Jewish party Shas, the Ra'am Balad Alliance, Kulanu, Yisrael Beit, and Yisrael Beitenu would all get 4 seats. So the right-wing political parties would get 66 seats, the left-wing political parties would get 54, which would then give the controversial Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu another term in office. But of course, much depends, for example, the voter turnout, much depends on whether many undecided voters change their minds at the last moment. Anyway, should he be able to form a new government, he would become prime minister for a record 5th term. Should he lose, then an ex-general would become the next prime minister. He has pledged clean government and social cohesion. The 69-year-old Likud party or coalition leaders hope of overtaking Israel's founding father, David Ben-Gurion, as longest-serving prime minister in July 2019 has been dented by a looming draft indictment, but he denies any wrongdoing. Critics warn of Bibi fatigue and argue that the parliamentary election should bring fresh faces to high office. Stalking Netanyahu in the opinion polls has been Benny Gantz, a former chief of the armed forces and centrist political novice. Buttressed by two other former generals at the top of his blue and white party, Gantz, 59, has sought to push back against Netanyahu's self-styled image as unrivaled in national security. This is a choice between a strong right-wing government under Netanyahu or a weak leftist government under Gantz, Likud said in a statement. Gantz told Reuters in response, Netanyahu is not the Messiah nor an irreplaceable legend. The people of Israel long for something else. With little policy daylight separating the two candidates on Iran and the Palestinians, or on Israel's humming economy, much of the voting will be guided by the question of their character. Which man wins is unlikely to be decided when the polling stations close at 10 p.m. Israeli time. No party has ever won an outright majority in the 120-seat Knesset, meaning days or even weeks of coalition negotiations will lie ahead. Israel's president, Mr. Reuven Rivlin, will consult with the leaders of every party represented in the Knesset and choose whoever he believes has the best chance of forming a government. Although both Netanyahu and Gantz have publicly ruled out a future alliance in a national unity coalition, some analysts predict a rethink, especially if the candidates agree to tackle together a widely expected U.S. plan for Middle East peace. The plan's sponsor, U.S. President Donald Trump, offered an unusually clement observation on the election, telling his Republican Jewish supporters on Saturday, April the 6th, 2019, I think it's going to be close to good people. Okay, by way of historical comparison, briefly, I can look at those elections. Anyway, these are elections to the 21st Knesset. The first Knesset elections in 1949, January 1949, were held just 8 months after Israel had proclaimed independence. They were won by the mainstream Labor Party, Mapai, led by Mr. David Ben-Gurion, who had become the provisional prime minister at the new re-established Israeli independence declaration in May 1948. Mapai received 46 seats and was able to form a government with the United Religious Front and some other parties. And because the vote threshold was only 1%, 13 parties or alliances entered the Knesset. Yes, the Mapai party formed a coalition with the United Religious Front, the Progressive Party, the Sephardim and Oriental communities, and the Democratic List of Nazareth. He had this principle without Herut and Maki, because the Herut, a right-wing Israeli Jewish nationalist political alliance, in his opinion, favored a right-wing dictatorship, and Maki, the Israeli Communist Party, favored a left-wing dictatorship. Besides, the Herut's leader, who ironically was a Polish-born Jew, Israeli Jew, just like Mr. Ben-Gurion, Mr. Menachem Begin, regarded himself as a kind of instrumental figure in the re-establishment of Israeli independence, as did, of course, Prime Minister Ben-Gurion. The two men never served in the same government. Menachem Begin was a religious Israeli Jew, while Ben-Gurion was a secularized or even atheist Israeli Jew. On the other hand, both of those Israeli prime ministers, because Begin became prime minister in 1977, Ben-Gurion had retired for good from the prime ministership in 1963. both of those two Israeli prime ministers came to respect, especially or among others, especially the born-again Christians who stood by Israel. In 1951, Mapai won with 45 seats and was able to form a second government, or actually third government already. The first Knesset had two governments with Mizrahi, Hapoel HaMizrahi, Agudat Yisrael workers, and the three Israeli Arab parties. Mapai won the third Israeli or Knesset elections in 1955 with 40 seats and again remained in the government, which was already the seventh government during the new Israeli independence, with the National Religious Front, Mapam, another left-wing party, the Progressive Party, Ahdut Ha'avoda, and the three Israeli Arab parties. In 1959, the Mapai party rose to 47 seats, with Herut coming a distant second with 17 seats. And Ben Gurion again formed a government with the National Religious Party, Mapam Ahdut Ha'avoda, the Progressive Party, and the three Israeli Arab parties. In 1961, Mapai remained as the largest party with 42 seats, forming another government with the National Religious Party, Ahdut Ha'avoda, Agudat Israel Workers, Cooperation and Brotherhood, and Progress and Development. In 1965, the Labor Alignment became the largest coalition with 45 seats. The Gahal coalition or party led by Menachem Begin came second with 26 seats. Another left-wing government was formed by the alignment. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, the alignment, the National Religious Party, Mapam, the Independent Liberals, Poale, Agudat, Yisrael, Progress and Development, and Cooperation and Brotherhood. But because of the Six-Day War in June 1967, Gahal and Rafi joined the coalition to form a national unity government. In the 1969 Knesset elections, Prime Minister Golda Meir led the alignment to a victory with 56 seats. Gahal came second with 26 seats. A national unity government included the alignment, Gahal, the National Religious Party, the Independent Liberals, and Progress and Development, and Cooperation and Brotherhood, but Gahal left the government in August 1970 after the government had decided to adopt the Rogers Plan, named after US Secretary of State or Foreign Minister William Rogers, to achieve an end to belligerence in the Arab-Israeli conflict. Israel was to withdraw from Egyptian territory occupied in the war. Both Israel and Egypt would have to conclude binding commitment to maintain peace with each other, and negotiations between the two countries for agreement on areas to be demilitarized would have to be undertaken, with measures to guarantee free passage through the Gulf of Aqaba and security against arrangements for Gaza. The 1973 Knesset elections were held at the end of that year, on December the 31st, over 2 months after the Yom Kippur War, where Israel, with relatively heavy losses, was able to keep most of the territories it had occupied in the 6 Days War over 6 years earlier. Egypt and Syria suddenly attacked Israel, although the Israeli army's security or intelligence officers had informed Prime Minister Golda Meir just hours before the war started that the war would start that evening, or late that evening, late that afternoon. It started already at 2 p.m. Anyway, the alignment still prevailed with 51 seats under Prime Minister Golda Meir. The Likud coalition took 39 seats, with the other parties trailing. The alignment was able, with difficulty, to form government on March the 10th, 1974, with the National Religious Party and the Independent Liberals. However, Meir resigned already on April the 11th, 1974, after the Agranat Commission had published its interim report on the Yom Kippur War, which accused the government and then major Israeli generals of having ignored the signs that another war was about to take place. The Israeli army had been placed on a fairly high degree of alert in the spring of 1973, several months before the war started, because of Egyptian military exercises. Yitzhak Rabin replaced Golda Meir as prime minister on June the 3rd, 1974, and formed a coalition with RATS, the Independent Liberals, Progress and Development, and the Arab List for Bedouins and Villagers. The National Religious Party joined the coalition on October the 30th, and RATS left it on November the 6th. This government resigned on December the 22nd, 1976, after ministers of the National Religious Party were sacked because the party had abstained from voting on a motion of no confidence, which had been brought by Agudat Yisrael over a breach of the Sabbath on an Israeli Air Force base. In the elections for the 9th Knesset on May the 17th, 1977, the Likud coalition won with 43 seats. The alignment sank to just 32 seats. The Dash, or Democratic Movement for Change, took 15 seats. And there were corruption scandals. The Yadlin affair of had been corruption scandals. The Yadlin affair of 1976 had involved Mr. Asher Yadlin, a major fundraiser for the Labour Party, who in September 1976 was about to be appointed governor of the Bank of Israel. However, he was detained by police on October the 20th. And on October the 24th, the cabinet decided to appoint Mr. Arnon Gafni instead. In mid-December, Yadlin was charged with taking bribes totaling 280,000 Israeli shekels, as well as other offenses. On March the 14th, 1977, Yadlin pleaded guilty to some of the charges. On January the 3rd, 1977, Housing Minister Mr. Abraham Ofer committed suicide. And then there was the controversy over the former bank account of Mrs. Leah Rabin, the prime minister's wife, which she had established when Rabin was the Israeli ambassador to the United States, although she had closed the account already by the time it was, or before the time it was discovered. A right-leaning government was formed with the the Likud National Religious Party, Agudat Yisrael, and Shlom Tzion, which soon merged into Likud. The government also included former alignment politician Mr. Moshe Dayan as foreign minister. And Dash joined the government in October 1977 with its leader, or leading politician Mr. Yigal Yadin, becoming deputy prime minister. Dash favored such reforms as ensuring that Israel would not annex majority Palestinian territories to the extent that its Jewish majority would be threatened, and that Israel adopt a first past the post electoral system to create a stable two dominant party system. In 1979, Foreign Minister Moshe Dayan resigned. And also during this Knesset, twice Prime Minister Menachem Begin signed with the Egyptian President Anwar el-Sadat and the US President Jimmy Carter the Camp David Peace Accords in September 1978 and in March 1979. In the June 1981 Israeli Knesset parliamentary elections, the Likud coalition got 48 seats. The alignment rose dramatically to 47 seats. Dash had broken up already. And Begin was able to form a new government with the Likud coalition, the National Religious Party, Agudat Yisrael, the Movement for the Heritage of Israel, or TAMI, and Tehiyah. Begin resigned due to health reasons, and Yitzhak Shamir formed the 20th government of independent Israel in October 1983 with the same coalition parties. In the July 1984 Knesset elections, the alignment became the largest coalition with 44 seats. The Likud coalition got 41 seats, which led to the formation of a national unity government with a rotating prime ministership between Shimon Peres of the alignment and Yitzhak Shamir of the Likud coalition. An anomaly was the election of the extremist Israeli Jew, American-born Jew, by the way, Mr. Meir Kahane, who favored the expulsion and then peaceful immigration of all Arabs, peaceful immigration with financial inducements, and then expulsion or deportation if the financial inducements would not be enough to create just about exclusively Israeli Jewish state. He was barred from ever again from being a Knesset candidate before the 1988 elections. In the November 1988 Knesset elections, the Likud coalition received 40 seats, the Labor alignment received 39 seats, and another national unity government was formed under Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir. The peace process with the Palestinians and their controversial leader, PLO chairman Yasser Arafat, was one of the main topics in elections for the 13th Knesset in June 1992. The Labor Party was able to prevail with Yitzhak Rabin, who had formerly served as prime minister from 1974 to 1977. Labor received 44 seats. The Likud coalition received 32 seats. And Labor's victory was helped or magnified by the failure of several small right-wing parties to pass the electoral threshold. Rabin was able to form a new government, including Labor, Meretz, and Shas. Hadash and the Arab Democratic Party supported the government despite not formally belonging to it. Shas left the coalition in September 1993 when Prime Minister Rabin signed a preliminary peace agreement with Arafat in Washington, D.C., and watched live by probably hundreds of millions of people around the world. He reluctantly and uneasily shook hands with Arafat with US President Clinton towering over those two short political leaders, short in stature, not in tenure, or not in political career, rather spreading his arms to encourage them to shake hands. Ehud joined the coalition in January 1995. Rabin was assassinated by an extremist Israeli Jew law student or former law student, Mr. Yigal Amir, following a peace rally in Tel Aviv in November 1995. Shimon Peres became the new prime minister and formed a new government later that month, including Labour, Meretz, and Ehud. In May 1996, there were two simultaneous elections for the Knesset and then for prime minister. Benjamin Netanyahu of the Likud coalition narrowly won the election for prime minister with 50.5%, with Shimon Peres of the Labour Party receiving 49.5%. In the simultaneously held Knesset elections, ironically, Labour Party received 34 seats, while the Likud Gesher Somet coalition received 32 seats. Prime Minister Netanyahu formed his first government, including the Likud Gesher Somet alliance. Shas, the National Religious Party, Yisrael Ba'aliyah, United Torah, Judaism, and the Third Way. Gesher broke away from the alliance in January 1998. He faced several issues during his first term as prime minister. The left argued the peace process was advancing too slowly, but signing the Hebron Agreement and the Wye River Memorandum also caused him problems with the right wing. Eventual problems passing the state budget for 1999 led to early elections for both the Knesset and the prime minister being called, which were held in May 1999, and which were won by the Labour Alliance, or One Israel Alliance. Mr. Ehud Barak defeated Prime Minister Netanyahu in the prime ministerial election in May 1999 with 56.1% of the vote. In the simultaneously held Knesset elections, One Israel Alliance received 26 seats. The Likud coalition took 19 seats. Barak was able to form a new coalition with One Israel, Shas, Meretz, Yisrael Ba'aliyah, the Center Party, the National Religious Party, and United Torah, Judaism. Then there were elections only for the prime minister following the government's collapse. In February 2001, the aged former general, Mr. Ariel Sharon of the Likud coalition won those elections with 62.4% of the vote, and was able to form a new government afterwards. In 2003, the next Knesset elections were led. The Likud alliance took 38 seats, Labour sank to just 19 seats, and Sharon remained as the prime minister, being able to form another right-leaning coalition. But as we know, he suffered a stroke in January 2006 and then lived for several years in coma. Ehud Olmert became the new prime minister. In the 2006 Knesset elections held in March of that year, the new Kadima party with Ehud Olmert prevailed with 29 seats. Labour took 19 seats. Olmert was able to form a new government. With Kadima, Labour, Shas, and Gil. In the 2009 Israeli Knesset elections, Kadima, led by interim Prime Minister Tzipi Livni, the first woman since the late Prime Minister Mrs. Golda Meir, to serve at least on an interim basis as the Israeli Prime Minister. Likud, however, was right behind Kadima with 27 seats, and Netanyahu was able to form a new government with the Likud coalition, Yisrael Beitenu, Shas, and even the Labour Party and the Jewish Home. In the 2013 Israeli Knesset elections held in January of that year, the Likud Yisrael Beitenu alliance prevailed with 31 seats. Yesh Atid came second with 19 seats. Kadima had collapsed to just 2 seats. Netanyahu was able to form a new right-leaning coalition government. In March 2015, early Knesset elections were held, with the Likud coalition prevailing, getting 30 seats. The Zionist Union came second with 24 seats. Netanyahu was able to form another right-leaning coalition. In May 2015, it was approved with the smallest possible majority by a vote of 61 to 59. In Israel, because of the fragmented party system and the still relatively low electoral coalition, the government formation process is often a laborious one. And often it happens that then even if the prime minister was a right-winger, there has to be at least one left-leaning party, or at least there must be centrist parties to secure a majority. And likewise, if the prime minister happens to be a left-winger or left-leaning individual or politician, there has to be at least one right-leaning party to secure a majority in the Knesset. And because the prime minister must be secured or elected formally, or his government must be approved by an absolute majority, minority governments cannot be formed except perhaps on an interim basis.